Browns OTAs continue in Berea. Deshaun Watson out there today in front of the media, and just what we said was going to happen kind of did happen. People don't understand the word rehab. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, joined by the OBR's Pete Smith. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Everyday crowd keeps growing and growing. Make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. OTAs continued. Deshaun Watson, there was some slight footage, obviously, from Tuesday. Back on the field today. Media present. And I guess the expectation is, I believe some people just think QB1 is going to take every single rep. It's not week 3. It's not week 4. It's not week 5. Deshaun Watson is still rehabbing his way back. Nobody has claimed that he is 100%. Deshaun has not claimed that he's 100%. The team has not claimed that he is 100%. So when he sits out and does not take every single rep, all of a sudden we have some people kind of not truly understanding the process. Pete, look, OTAs are great. And maybe we'll even mention this here about, the existence of OTAs going further. But for, Deshaun, it's not about the last week in May. It is everything about September 8th. Long way to go before we get there. And, his time in the league should let you know and let you allow the fact that between his camp, the Browns training staff, they are putting the best track for him to find his way to be ready to go for training camp, certainly for week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes. Look, the goal is for him to be good week 1, not for him to impress.
And what we've seen is pretty good.
Anyone on air. Yeah. I mean, look, the bottom line is I don't. This is why I wrote what I wrote last week, and I'm not sure why the Browns changed their mind so quickly, because people can't control themselves on some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever was going to happen was going to be overreacted to. Either he looks way too good, and people are like, "Oh, he's healthy and he's still rehabbing," or he's not doing enough, and this must mean this, that, and the other. The reality is, they have decided to take a very determined approach, and today he did drills, he did stuff on air, and he did not do the competition periods, which signals to me they don't want him to do anything that sort of requires quick spastic movement at this point, which would be an easy way to potentially have an issue. Whether or not he's actually at risk of really doing damage to it at this point, I don't know that he is, but if the program's working, stick with it, because ultimately that's the most important part. If the Browns seem to, and this doesn't just apply to Deshaun Watson, but it applies to a lot of the guys they're rehabbing. Unfortunately, they had a lot of guys with season-ending injuries. Browns are taking very deliberate, slow process with Watson, with their tackles, with Nick Chubb, with a lot of these guys, DTR, with a lot of these guys. So just trust it. The deadline for me that I've been looking at the entire way has been training camp. It wouldn't surprise me if he, based on what I've seen, that he sort of does a little bit more next month in the mini camp. I think there's a potential lift that he can sort of provide the team in that scenario. The team goes on summer vacation feeling good about what he's doing. And I imagine if he's full go at that point, then he will also do some stuff where he gets together with teammates and do some work. So there's a lot of potential benefit from that side. But I'm not worried at all at what I see in this. And if you're unhappy about watching Jameis Winston throw in 7-on-7, okay, but that's not the point. I'm worried about what he's going to do against Dallas DBs and Micah Parsons, not what he's going to do against some of the the guys who are there on defense.
This is where it's at, and and look, it was always going to be the damned if you do, damned if you don't, and the other thing was going to be, oh well, if he's not throwing in front of media, things are a lot worse than. Look, we all like you've all been following this team a lot longer than I have. We all know the way it's going to go. There's the one crowd's going to run one way, the other crowd's going to run the other way, so it didn't matter whatever they did, or when he finally did do some throwing in front of the media. We all knew we knew basically the cast was die, so to speak here. But Pete, with OTAs and now this talk, and we know, look, JC Tretter, this is something JC Tretter certainly mentioned when he was still playing, about OTAs, the future of OTAs, and the NFL does not like it. Of course, the NFL wants you to find a way to be glued to NFL coverage 12 months a year, 365 days, this, that, and the other thing. But there could be the theory, Pete, that, maybe a carrot, because we know you're going to 19 weeks, maybe 20 weeks, 18 games. We know that's coming. 18 games is coming. So this might be one where the NFL maybe offers a little bit of a carrot. But, I do believe also that there are a lot of players who agree with Shelby Harris. Look, there's only, you're home for so long. You want to be around the guys.
Well, the real issue comes down to, look, the league doesn't like this for the very simple reason of they want a 12-month league. And you are basically saying we're going to rip this thing open and you get a 10-month league. The NFL hates that idea. That's why you get the contrived holiday of the schedule release a couple weeks after the draft, and you get OTAs and you get mini camp and you get all these dribs and drabs. And the most you ever really get off is like that 5 to 6 week period between mini camp and the start of training camp. Like the NFL does not want you to get any more breathing room than that. And even if they go to the 19-week schedule or whatever it is, they're going to push everything back another week. So that shrinks that window down even more. The players who are against this, I think most of them are going to be players with kids. And it's pretty simple. Like if you are at OTAs in May, or April, end of April into May, and you have kids, they're in school. You can go work out and do your stuff. When you then say, hey, you can have off this period of April to May, that's great, but it doesn't give you the level of access that you would have to your kids, like that you would have in now late June and early July, because they're off on summer vacation and you get to do the trips and all these things that, like, that given the this is the business we have chosen, you lose a lot of your time, and that, you can say this is first world problems or whatever, but this is a negotiation. You literally, you can complain about that and say, well, these guys are spoiled, this, that, and the other. One, most of them don't make nearly as much money as you think they do, given what they give up. And two, they can advocate for themselves in this manner, and I don't blame them one bit. I would say more power to them, because this is a real thing. Given the amount you sacrifice, you still want to be able to have that quality time with your kids. I think Shelby Harris has 3. The Browns defensive line room has about like 40 kids between them. Like everybody has 3 kids or 4 kids. Like it's a big family affair in there, because they're almost all of them are, late 20s, low 30s. So, that becomes a real sticking point. So I get it from that standpoint. I get it from his that angle.
No, it is. Look, it's difficult, and we'll see the way it all works out. The NFL, trust me, they're not going to lose a buck on this, and they'll find a way. Who knows? There'll be something new implemented, whatever. It is a absolutely money-making machine, and that will never ever end. We're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback position. Pete wrote an article today. We're going to touch on that. Latest Locked On Browns continues. Everybody stick around. It is win or go home championships on the line in the NFL and in the NHL and the NBA. FanDuel is getting you a great shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals still going on in the NHL. We'll see if the Timberwolves can miraculously find a way to the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics. Check everything out at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I am joined by the OBR's Pete Smith. As always, appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen. Join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, I would say one of the deeper positional groups right now, and yes, it's top heavy, but it's not like there isn't, some possible promise once you get past Denzel Ward, MJ Emerson, Greg Newsome. You wrote obviously a nice piece today on Halassi. He was somebody who was picked up last year at the waiver wire and ended up playing probably more than the Browns expected. There was a rotating door at times with injuries at the cornerback position. This is a time where you can get a lot of reps, obviously, from the secondary guys. Denzel Ward was there today, was participating in some aspects, not with a helmet though. But the cornerback position room, it's going to be something that's going to be a strength for the Browns and could lead to them to be in a possible sweet spot as they come to the end of the summer, because you're not going to keep everybody and you may have somebody who's got some value to somebody else.
Right. So Denzel Ward sort of set the tone with the DBs. I mean, one, because it's super competitive, but it would be very easy for him to go wherever and not show up to OTAs because he has the credibility to do that. But he has made it a point to sort of set the tone there and be there, which, I don't see it as a huge deal if he's not. But I do think when it comes to a player like that, it just ups the level of seriousness just a little bit because he's there. And you I don't know, it's one of those things where you stand a little bit taller, you go a little bit, you just do a little bit more. It's not life-changing or anything, but you just sort of get a little extra. Anyway, but you sort of know where the Browns are going to be at with Ward and Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome. And short of somebody offering a lot for Greg Newsome, the Browns are going to keep him because they want to win. And Greg Newsome is very helpful. In addition to being able to play the slot, the one value that people sort of discount with Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward misses basically a month a year. And Greg Newsome can easily hop right back outside and give you capable corner play. And the Browns last year put in the likes of Cam Mitchell, the rookie, who played reasonably well in a couple spots. And they drafted Miles Harden out of South Dakota. And then they signed his competitor, a rival from South Dakota State in Deshaun Gales, who's also a slot guy. So if you're sort of looking at a world post Newsome, if they were to trade him, you sort of have to go, well, what happens when Denzel Ward misses a month? Maybe Cameron Mitchell cross-trains and does some things like that. He did play a little bit on the boundary last year, but they don't have a whole lot of answers. And the one guy that profiles to play outside is Halassi. And Halassi is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, he is a press corner who had a lot of on-ball production at Western Kentucky. Initially started at Oregon, played. They tried to move him to safety, and he started doing the portal thing. But when you look at the athletic profile for Khalif Halassi, well, I should say, if you look at the profile for Martin Emerson, coming out of the draft, I was sort of one of those people who was I don't know. I really liked his game. And I was sort of maybe he's a zone corner because he's a 4-5 guy. He's not particularly explosive in his jumps, but he's weirdly agile. And one, that might suggest he's a really good cover 2 corner. And two, might actually make sense in the world where he's a slot, which you think about it that doesn't make sense. But the bet the Browns made on Emerson was, hey, he's going to press the shit out of the guy. And then if that guy gets around him, he's also agile enough to make up the ground, catch up, use his body and his length to now play the ball. Well, you look at Khalif Halassi's athletic profile, and he's not as big or strong as Emerson. Emerson was a 3rd-round pick. Halassi's undrafted free agent. However, you look at his and Halassi didn't do the 40, but I don't suspect he would have run any better than Emerson would have. And his jumps were also mediocre. But you look at his agility, you're wow, 6'6", 3-cone, a 4.14, something to get shuttle, and you're wow, that's pretty good. And again, it seems like they're making the same bet that somebody has to go around Halasi. Okay, he's got length. He's got decently long arms. Again, not as big or not as strong as Emerson, but like if they have to go around him and he can make up that ground, he can do the same thing. So now they carried him all last year, and now into this year, hopefully he got stronger. Hopefully he took advantage of, improving his body and that stuff. But if that formula works for them again, they've got another press corner that really upgrades the depth of the team and gives them another outside guy in the same mold as Emerson. So if they get to a place where they're without Greg Newsome anymore, they can plug him, theoretically have answers for all of their guys. If it's Mitchell in the slot or outside, if it's Harden able to prove himself in the slot, whatever. So you sort of look at this and you're trying to guess how many guys are going to make this team. You would assume 6. Justin Hardy's going to be one of them because he's the special teams guy, and the Browns are going to do everything they can to make sure he never, ever plays corner. But he's phenomenal at special teams. So they got to find 5 good guys, and maybe they can get one of these guys to the practice squad. But I'm not convinced Halasi is going to be that guy you can get there, given that the Browns, one, got him off waivers for the Chiefs as an undrafted free agent, and then never, ever, ever put him in a position where he could be scooped up by somebody else. And I can't help but think that if he makes the waivers, that he's gone.
It would be the same thing. And for Kansas City, it could have been a scenario where obviously he became somebody, that maybe, they were hopefully trying to sneak to the practice squad, would have ended up probably being a significant player for them at some point, and then probably on through the playoffs. And it continues, look, Jim Schwartz is going to value his pass rush. So therefore, if you're going to value your pass rush, you want dominant corners because you were committing so much to just hopefully having the quarterback never even throw the ball. Now, if you all remember the way it was, last spring, last summer, the cornerbacks, what did they constantly tell you? This job is easy. Like, we don't really even have to cover that long. And, that's the premise they continue. And certainly that was the importance of, the first selection they made this year in the draft in Michael Hall, a penetrating 3 technique, something where they just figure they can continue to get more and more pressure from the inside. You combine that with what Miles obviously does as the absolute freak show of the NFL, along with Zadarius Smith, Agbenaya, Ankarangpo, all the others. And the recipe is simple: kill the quarterback. And if not, our cornerbacks have coverage, and we'll certainly get the opportunity to turn the ball over. We're going to continue here. Just, maybe get the opinion of, maybe what OTAs mean as far as, maybe relative to importance for what positional groups. We're going to continue on here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Everybody stick around. Your latest Locked On Browns, segment 3. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. We are joined by the OBR's Pete Smith. Certainly talking some about OTAs, Deshaun Watson's work today, cornerback position. Pete, but with OTAs, is there something here? And look, it could be anything because, we do have a lot of new coaches on the staff. Is there any maybe positional group here where either OTAs in general or this OTA sessions for the Cleveland Browns have a little bit more importance than maybe years past or other positional groups?
Well, I would look at corner and wide receiver just because this is it's not.
There's no half-assing this. When they say it's live, corners are going to go live, wide receivers are going to go live. It's going to be 100.
Kind of like there are times where I've seen some of the clips where there's like Martin Emerson gives up a completion and he could absolutely deck the guy and doesn't.
Oh, of course.
There's a little bit of that respect. But yeah, in terms of competition, you're going to get more out of those two groups going against each other than anybody else. The offensive and defensive lineman can't really do anything. Linebackers, you can get impressed by a guy running around and sort of like doing coverage things. But that's one of those positions where let me know when we get the pads on because they've got to go stop the run or some of these other things. Tight end, yeah, look, I would say tight end has some importance in general just because for the Browns, you have to find out if they have 3 guys worth rostering on this team because they may not. They may sit there and go, David Njoku, Jordan Akins, that's it. We'll put somebody on the practice squad and we'll keep like an 11th defensive lineman or something along those lines. So it really comes down to those positions. And you could put a little bit on the quarterback situation, and yeah, you're not seeing Deshaun Watson throwing DTR. Has got a little bit of a ways to go, but you're Tyler Huntley. you are trying to not only try to earn a job with the Browns, you are trying to earn a job with 31 other teams. So like for him, these reps matter. Like even if you look at this as an internship of sorts, where he signs with Cleveland and goes, man, I just really love the coaching I've got going here, and I feel like I'm going to be in a better spot for having come to the Browns in the same way that a lot of guys have. He still wants to go out there and compete every day to get as good as he can. And Jameis Winston, same thing. He's got to sort of prove himself. And, because there's this conversation about the whole Joe Flacco thing. Well, I don't think Jameis Winston thinks this way, but whether or not he means to be, he's sort of competing against the ghost of Joe Flacco, like in some way of, because if people come back and write, man, it's OTAs and Winston threw 5 interceptions or whatever, then we just go, oh, well, of course, they should have kept Flacco. Of course, they did this for X reasons that ignore some real issues that make sense for not wanting to bring Flacco back in terms of the Watson dynamic, but also like ignores the fact that he is 39, that he does have some real potential fall off there. So yeah, I mean, ultimately it's the DBs and receivers the most important thing. And the reason those things are so important for the Browns is they've got way more than they need at both those positions. And not to say that everybody's a star, but at the end of the training camp and everything, if everybody's healthy, the Browns are going to cut guys or trade guys that can make rosters elsewhere. Like you're going to be, basically what happened with Austin Watkins last year, except actually happens this time, where everybody's going, oh, Austin Watkins, he's gone, and they ends up with the practice squad. No, the Browns actually get guys people want this time around and are sort of excited about, and that may lead to some trades. It may lead to some opportunities, and may lead to sort of the Browns sitting there, fingers crossed, and then going, oh man, we lost them.
We heard, from Bubba Ventrone, and it's kind of funny because you've heard this from a couple of special teams coaches, maybe over, last week, the week before. There's still, as much as they were all pushing for some of these changes, Pete, they're not really sure how it all works. Because you're going to take your kicker and say, well, usually, you tell the guy to kick the ball to the Potomac River, whatever. That's certainly, not the case anymore. Kansas City Chiefs said maybe we won't even have our kicker kick off. Maybe we'll use somebody else. So they push for change, but for guys who have been doing this for a long time, certainly Bubba Ventrone qualifies. You basically have to reinvent yourself in a whole new realm of whatever special teams is going to be. And I'd be honest, I don't think any of us are really going to understand what it's all about till about third, fourth week of the season.
Maybe. My suspicion is what we're going to end up with is basically football without formation rules. So you get your 11 dudes. It's going to look like the kickoff team's going to look like defense, relatively speaking. And then the offense is going to potentially look like an offense where you don't have rules as far as where the linemen have to go or how many guys have to set up. And you sort of get this wild card in terms of how guys want to line up, but you're going to get what amounts to like run blocking. You're going to get some potential for some weird passes and laterals and that type of thing. And what wouldn't surprise me at all is if teams come through this and they go through, man, this is a really big advantage for the receiving team. Just kick it out of bounds. We'll take, or kick it out of the end zone. We'll give it to them at the 30. I would not be surprised at all if that's what comes out of this. And they just, effectively invalidate the whole thing because it's just not worth it when you're talking about, hey, the Dolphins are going to put Tyreek Hill back there, or the Browns going to put so-and-so back there, or running backs or whoever that are going to be like legitimate players. Like very, very quickly, you will come to this whole risk reward thing where just give it to them at the 30. It's not worth even messing with this, especially if you get into this whole thing where you're going to put a safety. Like D'Anthony Bell is probably really excited about this, that, hey, I can lock down a job because I can kick a little bit. And to get some of those things. But yeah, formationless football is the best way I can sort of describe the dynamic that you're looking at in terms of what this will look like.
Yeah, but that also for me draws up the ire of possibility of, helter skelter and this may be a great idea. And then until maybe one significant player obviously gets injured, then all of a sudden everybody's good. But, because then you're going to get, general managers, you're going to get head coaches, you're going to get coordinators looking down and saying, this is what you guys wanted. All right, this is what you guys wanted, and look what it did. But who knows? I mean, I was perfectly content. We know the impact of injury that was, which is great. But the thing is, well, let's do it this way. Basically their theory was maybe it'll prevent injuries. Maybe it's not a strong enough one. when the kicker splits the uprights and the team just got the ball afterwards, you knew there was no injuries. That was kind of what most teams were citing towards. Of course, there were certain games where the elements were a factor and the ball wasn't going to travel as far. But it's one of those things. They opted for the unknown. They opted for the old Family Guy. They opted for the mystery box, and we'll see the way it all plays out. And they got a lot of established special teams coordinators try to reinventing themselves. And let's be honest, out of all 32 of them, we even sure that all 32 of them truly understand what they can and cannot do. My bet is probably that they do not all know what they can do. Pete Smith, obviously from the OBR. Pete's had a nice run there since the transition. A lot more coming on at Pete's plate as we vamp up here summer and ramp up as we get closer and closer to the regular season. So make sure you're checking everything out from Pete over at the OBR. Make sure you're following at _Pete Smith _ I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you're a bunch of filthy animals, but you're my filthy animals. I suggest you join the filthy animals. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.